Okay, so get this. What if everything you see, touch, taste, the whole universe, is just a projection? Like a giant cosmic movie. That's
Whoa.
the kind of wild ride we're on today, diving deep into Walter Russell's The Secret of Light.
Oh, yeah.
We've got excerpts from his Divine Iliad chapters,
Mm-hmm.
and let me tell you, this guy does not hold back.
No, he does not. It's truly a challenge to our everyday understanding of reality.
Right.
Russell claims that what we perceive with our senses is just the surface level illusion.
Really?
Like the ripples on a pond, there's a much deeper unseen reality underneath. And he calls that the one idea.
Okay, so it's not that my coffee cup isn't real, it's just that there's more to it than meets the eye.
Right.
Help me unpack this one idea thing. It sounds pretty abstract.
Yeah, think of it like a blueprint for the entire universe. Everything from the tiniest particle to the largest galaxy is an expression of this one idea which resides in a state of pure stillness, pure light.
So how do we go from this still silent one idea to the hustle and bustle of the world we experience?
Well, Russell uses the analogy of a movie projector.
Okay.
The film itself is static, a series of still frames. But when light shines through those frames, it creates the illusion of motion on the screen. Similarly, he says the one idea is static, but it's constantly being projected into our reality, creating the illusion of movement change and even substance.
So you're saying that everything we see as change is just a different frame of the same movie,
Yeah.
the one idea constantly being projected. That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. And he takes it even further, saying that everything we experience is divided into pairs of opposites.
Oh, wow.
Male-female, hot-cold, expansion, compression. These aren't separate things, but two sides of the same coin constantly interacting and creating the illusion of change.
Okay, that makes me think of yin and yang,
Yeah.
that whole balance of opposites thing. But give me a real-world example.
Yeah.
How does this duality actually play out?
Sure. He uses the example of water and water vapor.
Okay.
They seem like different things, right? But they're actually the same substance, just in different states. Water is compressed while water vapor is expanded.
So applying that to the bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
is he saying that even forces like gravity and radiation, which
Yeah.
seem totally different, are actually just two sides of the same coin?
Exactly. They're both expressions of the same underlying energy,
Wow.
constantly pushing and pulling, creating this dynamic tension that gives rise to the universe as we know it.
All right, so where does the light part come in? He calls this book The Secret of Light.
Right.
But we've been talking a lot about stillness and opposites.
Yeah, well, remember how he says the one idea resides in a state of pure light?
Yes.
Light for Russell isn't just what we see, it's the fundamental energy of the universe.
Mm.
It's the source of all creation, the animating force behind everything.
So this is more than just physics. We're getting into the metaphysical here.
Yeah.
Is he saying that this light is conscious?
That's where it gets really interesting. Russell doesn't shy away from the spiritual implications of his ideas.
Yeah.
He uses terms like God, divine mind, and universal consciousness to describe this source of light and creation.
Okay, hold on. When you say divine,
Mm-hmm.
you're referring to a specific deity, or is this more of a universal force, like the force in Star Wars?
Right.
Because I'm getting a bit of a new age vibe here, and I want to make sure we're clear on what Russell's actually saying.
Yeah, you've hit on a key point. Russell's language can be a little tricky to navigate, especially for those coming from a more traditional scientific background. It's important to note that he wasn't aligned with any specific religion.
So it's more of a universal, all-encompassing energy or consciousness.
Yes, think of it as the source of all energy,
Okay.
all consciousness, all creation. And he's suggesting that we as humans are not separate from this source, but rather expressions of it, like sparks of that divine light.
Okay, now it's starting to click a bit. So how does this tie back to his idea that stillness is the source of power? It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah.
We usually think of power as being about action and movement.
He uses a powerful analogy to illustrate this point. A lever. The lever might seem like the source of power, but the real power comes from the stillness of the fulcrum, the point around which the lever pivots.
I'm starting to get it. It's like the stillness is the potential energy and the movement is just the expression of that potential. So are you saying that we as humans can access this power by tapping into that stillness within ourselves?
Exactly. And he believes that our modern obsession with motion and activity actually blinds us to this true source of power.
Wow.
He challenges us to look inward, to find that stillness within, and to tap into the limitless potential that lies there.
That's a pretty radical idea, especially in our fast-paced, always-on world. It makes you wonder if all this external striving is actually taking us further away from the true source of power and creativity. This raises an important question for all of us. If stillness holds the key to true power, where do we find that stillness in our own lives?
Right.
In a world that's constantly urging us to do more, be more, achieve more, how do we tap into that power of stillness that Russell speaks of?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's one that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into the secret of light.
Okay, so we've laid some groundwork here, but I'm still curious about how all this connects to the topics you mentioned earlier. UAPs, UFOs, parapsychology. You're not telling me you think Walter Russell was secretly investigating alien encounters, are you?
Not exactly, but remember how he said that our senses only show us a limited surface-level view of reality?
Yes.
What if those phenomena are glimpses into that deeper reality, the one beyond our everyday perception?
Okay, I'm intrigued. So instead of thinking of UAPs as physical objects zipping around,
Yeah.
maybe there's something else entirely.
Perhaps they're manifestations of energy or consciousness operating on a level that our current science doesn't fully grasp.
So Russell's work is like a framework for understanding these seemingly impossible events.
Exactly. It encourages us to expand our definition of what's possible
Right.
and consider that there might be forces at play that we're only beginning to understand. And this ties back to his ideas about human potential. If, as Russell suggests, we're co-creators with this divine consciousness, maybe we can learn to interact with these phenomena in ways we haven't even imagined yet.
Okay, now that's getting into some serious X-Files territory. But before we get too lost in the cosmos, let's bring this back down to Earth. How does all this impact normal, everyday people in modern life?
Right.
What does it mean for someone who's not necessarily a mystic or a UFO enthusiast?
Well, consider his emphasis on stillness. It's like an antidote to our frantic, hyper-connected world. Maybe finding that inner stillness is the key to navigating the chaos and finding true peace and fulfillment.
That's a perspective I think a lot of people can relate to, even if they've never heard of Walter Russell. It's like he's offering a different way of being in the world, one that's more aligned with our true nature.
Exactly. And if we can grasp that concept of duality,
Right.
that seemingly opposing forces are actually interconnected and interdependent, it could change how we approach everything, from personal relationships to global conflicts.
So instead of getting caught up in the us versus them mentality, we start to see the bigger picture, the interconnectedness of everything.
Precisely. And who knows, maybe that shift in perspective could help us create a more harmonious and sustainable future.
I'm starting to think that the secret of light isn't just some esoteric philosophy. It has some really profound implications for how we live our lives and shape the world around us.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of Russell's ideas.
All right, you've definitely piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
I'm ready to dive even deeper into this secret of light.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the secret of light. You know, last time we were talking about how our senses can be deceiving, showing us just a sliver of the true reality.
Right, it's like we're watching a movie, but we've forgotten there's a projector creating the whole thing.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what else are we missing?
And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of Russell's work, his perspective on knowledge. Now, he doesn't dismiss thinking, but he says it's not the source of knowledge itself. It's more like a tool to access knowledge that already exists.
So knowledge is out there like a universal library, and our thinking is just the key to unlock it.
Yeah. He uses the analogy of a well. Knowledge is the deep well of still water, and thinking is the pump we use to bring that water to the surface. The clearer the water in the well, the better our thinking, our creativity.
So how do we tap into that well of knowledge? Is it about studying more? Meditating? What's the secret?
That's where things get really interesting. Russell suggests that the purest knowledge comes from a direct connection to the divine, the universal mind. He talks about cultivating consciousness, about becoming aware of the light within.
Oh, no, we talk about intuition, like that gut feeling you get sometimes.
It's definitely related to intuition, but it goes deeper than that. It's about tapping into a universal source of knowing, a kind of cosmic internet where all knowledge is available.
This is getting a bit woo-woo for me, I have to admit. But let's play with it for a moment. How would this universal knowledge thing explain something like telepathy? You know, where two people seem to know each other's thoughts without any physical communication.
If we're all connected to this universal mind, the sea of consciousness, then maybe those seemingly paranormal abilities are just moments where that connection becomes crystal clear, like tuning in to the same radio frequency.
So instead of thinking of our minds as separate, isolated units, it's more like we're all swimming in the same mental ocean.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Russell's point about our senses limiting us. Maybe they make us perceive separation where there actually is none. We see ourselves as these distinct individuals, but deep down, we might all be connected in ways we don't fully understand.
That's a pretty trippy thought. I'm starting to see how this could revolutionize our understanding of not just UAPs and the paranormal, but also things like human connection and empathy.
Absolutely. It challenges us to reconsider what we think is possible, to look beyond the material world and explore those unseen connections.
Okay, I'm feeling a bit like Alice down the rabbit hole here, but let's keep going. I remember that Russell also talks about cycles being essential to the universe. How does that fit into all of this?
For Russell, the whole universe is a dance of cycles. Everything is constantly expanding and contracting, dying and being reborn. It's like a cosmic heartbeat, and it applies to everything from the smallest atom to the lifespan of stars.
I love the idea that even something as massive as a star has a life cycle, a beginning and an end. It makes you feel less intimidated by the vastness of it all, like it's all part of a bigger rhythm.
And he brings it back to our human experience, too. Our lives are full of mini cycles. Every breath we take, every heartbeat, the daily cycle of day and night. We're part of this grand cosmic dance, whether we realize it or not.
And what about death? If everything is cyclical, does that mean there's no real ending?
That's right. He sees death not as a full stop, but as a transition point in a larger cycle. It's a returning to the source, like a wave dissolving back into the ocean, only to reemerge as a new wave later.
This idea of death as a transition is pretty radical. What are the implications of that for how we live our lives? If there's no real ending, does that change our sense of urgency or responsibility?
That's a great question, and one that we can all ponder. If we see ourselves as part of this eternal cycle of creation and destruction, maybe it encourages us to live more fully in the present moment, to make choices that are aligned with the rhythm of the universe.
Okay, so we're all connected. Everything's cyclical, and our senses are kind of lying to us about how things really are.
Yeah.
This is giving me a serious existential crisis. But let's go even further down the rabbit hole. Russell says that there's no life in matter itself. Isn't that a bit of a contradiction, considering we're made of matter?
He's not denying that our bodies are physical. What he's saying is that life itself isn't a product of matter, but a spiritual principle, a force that animates matter. Think of it like electricity flowing through a wire. The wire is just the conduit. The electricity is what makes it come alive.
So our bodies are like the wire, and this spiritual force, this life principle, is the electricity. I'm starting to see the picture he's painting. But what happens to that life force when we die? If it's not bound to the physical body, where does it go?
He suggests that there's a part of us, the immortal self, that transcends the physical and continues on even after the body dies. Remember that ocean analogy. The wave is the individual life, but it's always part of the vast ocean of consciousness.
So death is like the wave dissolving back into the ocean. But what happens to that individual drop of water? Does it retain its individuality, or does it become completely absorbed into the whole? That's a mystery that has fascinated humans for centuries.
It is, and Russell's work offers some potential answers. He suggests that as we evolve spiritually, we shed our sense of separateness and merge more fully into that universal consciousness. It's like a journey from individuality back to unity.
That's a beautiful thought. It makes death seem less like an ending and more like a homecoming. We're all just returning to the source from which we came. But that journey from individuality to unity, how does that actually happen? What does that evolution look like?
That's where we get into the nitty-gritty of Russell's teachings, and it's something we'll be exploring further in the next segment.
All right, I'm hooked. Let's dive into the deep end and see what other secrets Russell's Secret of Light holds. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the Secret of Light. We've been through the cosmic looking glass, exploring everything from the nature of reality to the cycles of life and death.
And now we get to tackle the building blocks of the universe itself.
Yeah.
How does all this grand cosmic stuff actually play out in the physical world?
That's right, because so far we've been dealing with some pretty heady concepts. But Russell wasn't just a philosopher, he was a scientist and an artist. So how did he translate these abstract ideas into something more concrete?
Well, he had this fascinating idea about a fundamental form he called the cube sphere. He believed it's the blueprint for everything in the universe.
The cube sphere. Okay, that sounds a little out there even for Russell. Break that down for me.
Imagine a cube representing expansion, like something pushing outwards in all directions. Then picture a sphere representing compression, like something drawing inward from all sides. Russell said the universe is constantly pulsating between these two shapes.
So it's like the universe is breathing, expanding, and contracting between these two geometric forms. And everything we see, from galaxies to atoms, is a variation on this theme.
Exactly. He saw these two forces, expansion and compression, as the mother and father principles of creation. The cube, the expansive force, is the feminine principle, while the sphere, the compressive force, is the masculine.
I'm seeing how that ties back to his whole duality concept, the idea that everything exists in pairs of opposites. So where do gravity and radiation fit into this cube-sphere dance?
He saw them as the two primary expressions of this dualistic force. Think of it like a cosmic battery. Gravity is the negative pole, the inward pole, while radiation is the positive pole, the outward push.
Okay, so gravity is the force that draws things together, builds things up, while radiation is the force that breaks things down, spreads them out. Kind of like the yin and yang of the universe.
You got it. And Russell believed these forces are always in balance, always working together to maintain the harmony of the universe.
That makes me think of the life cycle of stars. They're born from the collapse of huge clouds of gas and dust, pulling everything together.
Exactly. That's gravity at work, compressing all that matter, creating immense pressure and heat until eventually, boom, a star is born.
So the birth of a star is a triumph of gravity over radiation. But then what happens?
Well, once the star ignites, it starts radiating energy outward, pushing back against the inward pull of gravity. It's a delicate dance, a constant tug of war. Eventually, though, the star's fuel runs out and radiation wins the battle.
And that's when the star dies.
It depends on the size of the star. Some stars just fade away, others explode in spectacular supernovas, scattering their elements back into space where gravity will eventually draw them together again to form new stars and planets. It's a beautiful, endless cycle of creation and destruction.
It really makes you appreciate the interconnectedness of everything. We're literally made of stardust, the remnants of stars that lived and died billions of years ago.
And remember how Russell said our bodies are like mini universes? He believed that same interplay of gravity and radiation is happening within us all the time. We're constantly taking in energy through food, air, sunlight, and radiating energy back out.
So we're not just static beings, we're dynamic systems of energy constantly exchanging with the world around us.
That's right. And he went even further, suggesting that our thoughts and emotions are also forms of energy that can influence the world.
Wait, you're telling me my thoughts have actual weight, like they can physically impact things?
Think of it more like a ripple effect. A thought and emotion, it creates a vibration, and that vibration spreads outward, impacting the energy field around us.
Okay, this is where my rational mind starts to push back a little. I'm all for the power of positive thinking, but this sounds a bit like The Secret. You know, just wishing for something hard enough will make it happen.
It's not quite that simple. Russell emphasized the importance of aligning our thoughts and actions with the natural laws of the universe. He believed that true power comes from understanding these laws and working in harmony with them.
So it's not about forcing our will on the universe, but more about understanding the currents and flowing with them, like a surfer riding a wave.
That's a great analogy. And the more we understand those currents, those underlying principles of creation, the more effectively we can navigate the world and manifest our desires.
This is all incredibly empowering, but it's also a lot of responsibility. If our thoughts and actions have this ripple effect, we have to be mindful of the energy we're putting out into the world.
Absolutely. Russell believed that true freedom comes with understanding that we're not just passive recipients of fate, but active participants in creating our reality.
This whole deep dive has been quite a journey. We've explored the nature of reality, the cycles of life and death, the forces that shape the universe, and the incredible potential that lies within each of us. What's the key takeaway you hope listeners will walk away with?
I think Russell's most important message is that we are all connected to each other, to the universe, to the divine source of all creation. And that connection gives us access to a power and wisdom far beyond our individual understanding.
It's a call to step out of our limited ego-based perception and embrace a larger vision of reality, to see ourselves as co-creators, as artists, as beings of light, with the ability to shape our world in ways we're only beginning to understand.
It's an invitation to explore the mysteries of the universe, both within and without, and to discover the boundless potential that lies dormant within each of us.
Well said. I think we'll leave our listeners with that thought. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Walter Russell's Secret of Light. We hope you found it as mind-expanding and inspiring as we did.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep shining your light.
I would have been on top of the charts, but it's politics. You do some gimmick shit and post, you get a lot of clicks. Drop some real shit and they probably won't acknowledge it.